Chris Cowlin. Fan cams. Club news. Transfer news. Match previews. Legend interviews. Spurs women. Press conferences. Covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. In this edition, we will be taking all of the viewers' questions and comments over the last couple of days. I'd like to thank the many thousands of you for leaving comments and asking questions for this episode. We will get through as many as we possibly can. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook and on Twitch, so please do get involved if you are watching or listening to this live. Let us know how you're feeling as a Spurs fan right now. Let us know how you are feeling about the Leicester game on Monday. Of course, we drew 1-1 at the King Power Stadium. And let us know how you're feeling about the transfer window. Of course, there is 9 days to go. I'm absolutely delighted to bring back to the channel Billie T. Of course, big Spurs fan. You will know Billy from his fantastic tweets on X. Billy, great to have you here. How are you?
Yeah, very good, man. Already looking forward to next season now after Leicester. So the countdown begins.
Here we go. The sarcastic comments of in here and 1 minute 30 in. Billy, let's start by me asking you a question. How are you feeling as a Spurs fan right now? Because 9 days to go in the transfer window. What have you made of the transfer window? What do you make of the Leicester game on Monday? What do you make of Ange Postecoglou's 12, 13 months that he's been at the club?
Do you know what? I think there's kind of two things happening at once for any kind of Tottenham fan right now. I think it's a really exciting time because we've got a lot of youngsters. Best group of youngsters that I've seen since I've been a Tottenham fan. Players like Mikey Moore, Archie Gray, and that is really, really exciting. But to contradict that, we're kind of starved of success as a football club as well for like the last 10, 15 years. And I think sometimes those two things can kind of contradict each other. Like we all want instant success and we're trying to do a long-term plan. And sometimes it's a bit difficult to find the balance of that. And I kind of think on Monday, glimpse of that in the whole game. So it's really exciting in some parts, great first half, and then the usual frustration. So I'm overall really positive because I think, exciting times are ahead, but I don't know. We've been here so many times over the last 15 years, haven't we? And I think, when are we going to get it right? And I've just got to pray this time as one. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling quite calm, Billy, about it. We're one game in. And I think that if Spurs would have taken the chances in the opening 45 minutes, we would be sitting here absolutely delighted and really looking forward to the next game. There has been so much negativity in the last couple of days since, of course, Monday evening, drawing 1-1. We had so many chances. Ange Postecoglou obviously set the team up in the right way. Had a number of the players scored in the first half and we would have gone in at half-time 3-0, it would be completely different. I think people would be feeling completely different. One game in, Everton up next. Hopefully that will be, a win on Saturday at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. What does worry me slightly, or I don't know whether worry is the right word, I think we could really judge the start of the season away at Newcastle, at home against Arsenal. I think those two are two huge games coming up, especially when a lot of people are worried about set pieces. We're certainly going to see what we're made of in those two games. Billy, let's get straight into it. Dennis Martin says here, we have to stop trying to walk the ball into the opposition goal. Peter Jones says, can we have some more shots outside the box? That's one thing that I did really notice in the opening 45 minutes at Leicester, how many times we just tried to walk the ball into the net. Does that frustrate you?
It does frustrate me. I thought the first half on Monday, I was there on Monday night, and I think it's some of the best football that we played largely, but it could have just been slightly better, a little bit more cutting edge. And the frustrating thing for me about it is we've got some really good long-range shooters, like Maddison and Son are two of the best long-range shooters you will see in the Premier League. And they don't shoot. Neither of them shoot anymore. And I understand, in the Premier League, especially if you're playing a relegated team, newly promoted team, you're going to come against a low block. We're going to play another low block on Saturday against Everton. It's something which we're going to get in. When you're a possession team like us, it's going to happen more than it doesn't happen. So we have to find a way around it. And sometimes that is just as simple as, cut inside and shoot bang one in from 30 yards. And I think the thing to remember about this is Man City experience this all the time as well. Arsenal experience it all the time. When you're playing in the Premier League, you're going to come against low blocks, and it's really tricky. But I would like to see us shoot a lot more, I think. But I do think largely we were so dominant in that first half. I think it's one of the best I've seen us play under Ange. It's a shame we couldn't have gone in 2-3-0 up, because then everyone would be absolutely buzzing for the season, wouldn't they?
Billy, what did you make of Dominic Solanki's debut?
I thought the signs were definitely there. Obviously, it's really difficult because he's literally only had 4 or 5 training sessions with us. Missed a couple of chances which he'd probably like to take, but I think overall his link-up play and just the fact that he's an outlet for us is really positive. I have no doubt it's going to be a really good signing for us.
Are you happy with the transfer window so far? And in the remaining 9 days, what do you expect to happen? What would you like to see happen in terms of incomings?
Yeah, and it's a bit like what I was talking about at the beginning. I'm kind of in too much. I think done some really good things. Solanki is like a proper quality signing. A lot of money paid for it, and I think as fans, for fans that pay the most expensive tickets in Europe, we've been constantly told, when we move to this stadium, it's going to be a game-changing thing. We have all these events that generate hundreds of millions for our club. That's the kind of signings we want to see continually. £60 million on a Premier League proven player. We've signed some good youngsters, signed a lot of teenagers, which is great. But I'll be honest, I would like to sign a couple more ready-made players for the first team by the time the window goes. The glaring holes for me are still in the number 6 position. I think we saw that a little bit in pre-season and a little bit on Monday as well. I still think we're a little bit too open at the back because we don't have someone that can screen defence. And I know we've got the new Burnley guy who I'm excited by. I would really like another quality forward player, just because I think what exposed Monday, and it's been a bit of a worry since the back end of last season, is we don't have many wingers that can take on a man and, really get past those low blocks. And I thought Johnson struggled on Monday. What do you reckon?
Do you know what, Billy? I think that in that final third, the way that Ange has gone on in his first 12 months at the club about there's so much more growth in that final third. Brennan Johnson, he really needs to improve. I don't think he is good enough at the moment. Timo Werner, who, of course, he replaced Johnson. I don't think Timo Werner is good enough. I thought it was a great move to bring him in initially on a loan. I don't agree with bringing him in again for another season. I just don't think he is good enough if we want to go to that next level. And Richarlison at the end, I want it to work for Richarlison, but I tell you what, that chance right at the end, he's got to be hitting the target there.
Yeah, and what do we pay for Richarlison? 50 million? You have to score that as a £50 million striker, I'm afraid. And I know it's been a bit of a weird one, Richarlison, because it seems like the club would be pretty happy to sell him to Saudi, wouldn't it? But I don't think he wants to go, which is fair enough. He's obviously made that decision. I back him for that. But you have to be taking those chances. Like, Harry Kane's not going to miss that chance ever. So it's a frustrating one. I'd love Richie to come good, but I think now that Solanki's there, I don't think he's going to start many Premier League games anymore, just because I think hopefully Solanki fits the team better. And I think the biggest frustration with Richarlison is we can't rely on him to be fit for the season, whereas Solanki played all 38 games with Bournemouth last year.
Billy, we were speaking off air about since Monday, it's been quite negative. The fan base has been quite negative, particularly on X. I know you're quite big on X. You use X every day. What do you make of the negativity over the last couple of days? And there is a lot of negativity towards certain players. There's a lot of negativity towards the board. And of course, and Postecoglou even. What do you make of it?
Personally, I feel quite relaxed and calm about the season, because I do think, it's just one of those games where if we'd have scored that second goal, we'd have been absolutely flying and buzzing. And I think it's too early to make any kind of cast iron judgments about the season ahead. I can totally get the frustration, just because as a fan base, we're so, as I was saying earlier, we're so starved of success. Every year, we've been told this is the year at Tottenham, we're going to finally act like a big club, we're going to finally be the one to go and win that trophy, and it doesn't happen for us. So I understand fans' frustration. What I would say is, I think, in difference to Conte and the Mourinho and the new era, I think you can see signs of a plan now. You can see signs of a style of play. You can see that we're getting players in. We're spending a lot more money than we used to. There's another argument where you could say we're spending money on the right players, but it's a different argument to what it was a few years ago when we weren't spending money at all. But there is a plan in place this time. And, I hate to bring them up. I really hate it. But if you look at Arsenal, for example, unfortunately we have to compare to, because we're a sizable club, and we kind of want to be where they are right now, challenging for the league every season. Arteta's second season, they wanted to sack him. Every club. I think they finished 8th twice, didn't they, in the first season and the second season. All their fans wanted to sack him, and they stuck by him. They kept backing him, And then after that is they started to develop, they came fifth and then second and second. So we're going to have to be in it for the long term, I think, if we want to do this. And I think it might be a bit difficult at times. Like Monday was a bump, but it's, at the end of the day, it's one draw against a newly promoted team on a Monday night. It's not going to really define our season. But if, the same trends continue, then I can understand fans getting a bit negative. But I think the plan is there in place, and we just got to stick by it and hope that it works, because I think for the first time in a while, there seems to be some forward thinking and some joint up thinking between the club and the players and the manager, which we haven't had for the last few years.
Billy, how many times have all of us Spurs fans said about the board backing the manager? I think it is very, very clear that the board are backing this manager. Now, this is the third transfer window under Postecoglou. What have you made of the transfers, and what have you made of the difference in recruitment? Because we have all been very critical about the recruitment in recent years.
I think it's without doubt that they're definitely backing him financially. I think the thing is, right, so I'm really happy to sign these youngsters and sign star players for the future. I think it's a brilliant plan. And I think over the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to be pretty well set because we've got some great youngsters coming through. I think to actually have success continually, though, you need to mix that in with some ready-made players that are going to come in and challenge the first team and even upgrade the first 11 players. What I don't like is signing, a winger that's going to be a rotation up with Johnson. I want to sign a winger that's better than Johnson so that Johnson becomes a rotation option. Or I want a striker that's better than Richarlison so that Richarlison comes as a rotation option, which is what we did this year. And now I think I'm very happy to sign these, teenagers that are going to come in and be, great young players for the future. But I would like to see a bit more first 11 quality, especially in the number 6 position and especially in the wingers position. Because I think we're, as again Monday showed, we're lacking that final bit of quality in the final third, I think. So I think I'm happy with it. They're definitely spending more. I just would like to see, what I would like to see is so it doesn't even become a question anymore, So we can just say, yeah, Andrew's definitely backed in this transfer window. Job done. Go and sign another £50 million player before the window opens, and then everyone can say, yeah, he was backed. Now let's see how it goes.
Billy, there's a lot of reliable journalists at the moment saying that a number 6 is not a priority for Tottenham. Would you, as a Spurs fan, be extremely disappointed then if we didn't bring in a new number 6? Because, of course, Rodrigo Bentancur got the nod on Monday evening against Leicester.
You know what? 2 weeks ago, I would have been okay with it. But now I just feel like Basuma has let down Ange big time. And I would personally, I think there's chances for Basuma gone just because of everything that happened last season with his discipline. He missed, 10 games through suspension or something like that last year, got injured a lot. It was great at the beginning of the season, got suspended a load, then came back and was never quite the same player again. Then Ange has been big enough in the summer. He's been big enough, Ange. Right before the start of the season, he goes and does what he does and gets banned. And I think that's you're out now. So I would replace Basuma personally. I think it's a lot to expect Archie Gray to go and play there every single week in the Premier League. As an 18-year-old who's never played in the Premier League before, he might be able to do it. Don't get me wrong, it'd be a gamble that pays off. But I personally would sell Basuma and go and really quality number 6. What about you?
I'm with you, Billy. I've been saying on this channel for the last few weeks, all of the fantastic youngsters that we've got, and as you actually said as well about the under-21s, the development players coming through, I think it's fantastic. However, we do need more experienced players in the squad. What do you think the chances of that actually happening? Because a lot of the guests I have on this channel, we've mentioned Eze from Crystal Palace. We'd all love to see him in a Spurs shirt, experienced in the Premier League as well. Solanki, who we've brought in, of course, experienced in the Premier League. I'm a big fan of that, bringing in players with experience actually in the Premier League, because how many players have come from European clubs and it's not quite worked out in the Premier League? What do you think the chances actually of Spurs signing experienced players in the Premier League are in the next 9 days? Because the way that we are going as a club, I feel like we are moving forward. But as Design Towin Lou says here, we have to be patient. It's only the second year under Ange Postecoglou. I know some fans get very, very frustrated by keep being told by people, well, we have to be patient. But I suppose we do have to be patient under this manager.
Yeah, and I think that's a big contradiction at the moment that we're all suffering. And I would never begrudge anyone of running out of patience just because, we've been told so many times as club this is going to be the year, and we've had to move stadium, we've had to lump, we've had to pay the most expensive tickets every single season in our numbers. We sell out the stadium every year. We spend loads of money on our club. Prices are going up and up and up. So I have absolutely no problem with anyone's thinking that I've run out of frustration with Tottenham Hotspur right now. If it wasn't for Ange, I would be gone completely. Ange has really sort of reinvigorated my love for the club by quite some way. I was lost my way a little bit. I really like Andrew. I really like the way he talks in particular. I like the way everything that he's about, attacking football. So I think the two contradictions are you might have run out of patience with the board. I certainly have. But I'm still going to back the manager and I'm still going to back the team. And I think Levy and the board are lucky that fans generally like to see a young team coming through. There's nothing better as a fan, seeing some homegrown players come through the team. Mikey Moore, that's what all fans want to see, as a young Tottenham boy coming through and smash it like we got with Harry Kane. So I think Levy's lucky that he's got a manager that the fans like and young players that the fans like. So now I think it's time we really need that little bit of quality that we can actually go and achieve something with this. Otherwise, it's all just for nothing. We can't keep going, finishing fourth, finishing sixth, finishing fourth. We have to get that trophy over the line. And if we don't buy those Premier League experienced players, it's not going to happen, I don't think. You have to do that. We saw it with Arsenal last year. I hate to keep mentioning them, but they went and bought £100 million number 6 themselves. And I know they finished second, but they had a brilliant seat. They're in the title race for the last game of the season. If that was us, we'd be absolutely, buzzing for where we were at this season. So you have to go and do it. You have to go and get that Premier League quality. It's not going to happen otherwise. You've got Man United and Chelsea and Villa. They're all spending loads of money. West Ham spent loads of money. And if we really want to progress to get somewhere close to Arsenal and Man City, we have to go and spend. It's as simple as that.
There's a couple of comments here, Billy. Has the Toney interest fizzled out? Let's get your opinion on whether you liked Ivan Toney instead of Dominic Solanki or even both. Terry Wright says here, Gomez would be a terrific signing. Of course, there is links to Wolves star João Gomez, but it's expected that a team would need to pay between 60 and 80 million pounds. Surely that is not going to happen, is it?
I don't think so. And I think what we seem to be getting linked with a lot is these sort of energetic midfielders. Like we will have, seem to be linked every single day for like the last 2 years with Conor Gallagher. That's finally been put to bed now. He's joined Atletico twice in the last week or so. He might come back to Chelsea. Who knows how they're going? But Gomez, and we've also been linked with McTominay, haven't we? Which I can't really see materialising. But he obviously wants like a number 8 who can just be all over the pitch all the time. So I think sometimes we run out of legs, but I can't see us paying that. To be honest, I'm not massively familiar with the player. I don't really watch Wolves that much, but I can't see us going and dropping 60 or 80 million on that kind of player, to be honest. So I'd like to see us move on to maybe go back. I don't know what happened with the links with Ramsey of Aston Villa. Maybe they might come back up if there's a deal for Gio or something. On Toney, I was in kind of two minds because at the beginning of the window, I didn't want to sign him just because I didn't think his personality would match with our club. I've seen a couple of things about Brentford interviews where he's a little bit of a dodgy character. But then I saw England at the Euros. I saw what he was about, and I saw that actually, I think Tottenham are kind of missing that personality a little bit. We've got a lot of really nice players, and we saw it in Leicester. What can happen with Tottenham is, as soon as it starts going against us, we crumble. And we crumbled for about 15, 20 minutes against Leicester. And maybe we need a few more Ivan Tonys that are going to, bring us back from that moment, or get us back in the face of those players, like Jamie Vardy did against us. The same happened in the Brentford game last year when Mope and Toney did it back to us. We get rattled really, really easily. We get rattled really easily as a club, fan base, and Everton. So I would like a couple of more Ivan Tonys. If it was a straight shootout between Solanki and Toney, I think I would rather have Solanki because I think he suits us more. But what I would definitely do is probably, and I love Richarlison as a player. I love him as a character, but I just don't think we can rely on him. I would sell Richarlison and then replace him with Toney. I think Solanki and Toney would be two great set strikers for a Premier League club.
I completely agree. I think at the start of the window or before the Euros, I wasn't a huge fan of Ivan Toney, and then when you saw what an impact he was making with England at the Euros, I think it'd be a great addition in a Spurs shirt. Billy, Wade H writes here, I feel for Ange. He has done everything he can. He built a team that dominated 75% of the match, but the players just didn't finish the job. Now, you mentioned that you're a fan of Ange Postecoglou. We've had 7 different managers in the dugout since, and including Pochettino when he left in 2019. We have gone round in circles in some respects. The feel-good factor came back last season, certainly at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Some of those wins, it felt like a party atmosphere at Spurs. The mood certainly changed since the days of Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte. What's going to be different for you from the perspective from the board? We've spoken a little bit about him being backed and given the tools. What do you think is going to be different for him?
Well, I think the expectations are going to be different for him. And I think the expectations of fans and expectations of the board are two very different things. I think 99% of Tottenham fans now just want a trophy. That's all we really want. I think if you offered any Tottenham fan FA Cup and 8th, we'd all take it now just because we're desperate for that success. I think the board, we know now how they work, how their their sort of mindset is. They just want that Champions League football, and if he finishes 4th this season, that'll be enough for them. I think as a fan base, if we finish 4th, it wouldn't be disappointing because it is progress from last year. But I think deep down we all want a little bit more than that, don't we? Really, we don't. We've been 4th. How many times have we finished 4th under Conte? Where did that get us? Didn't get us anywhere. And we finished 4th under Pochettino in the Champions League season, and the last season we were terrible after that. We can't just keep being the cycle of finishing 4th and then not doing anything with it and not getting any actual tangible success. So I think the chairman will definitely be expecting him to finish in the Champions League now because of how much. What is it? Is it like about 300 million he spent since and manager or something like that? I think 325 million. I think I read.
It's a lot of money. Yeah,
a lot. It is a lot of money. It's about time they spent that much money on a manager, to be honest. I think they will definitely be expecting top 4. And we've seen in the past, Levy, if they don't get top 4, they get sacked. We've seen that, he sacked Mourinho, sacked lots of managers over in the last 20 years because they didn't get top 4. I think if Ange finishes 5th, I don't know. I think Ange has got a little bit more of a leeway with Levy just because he's quite a popular character and he has brought that feel-good factor back to the club. So I don't think it's top 4 or nothing, but I think the board will really be expecting top 4. And if there isn't some kind of, a really decent season without top 4, he will definitely go. But I think for the fans, they just want a trophy, and I certainly just want a trophy.
I certainly want a trophy as well, Billy, and I cannot wait for the day. Hopefully we'll see Heung-min Son as our captain lifting one down the high road on that bus. That's what I'm looking forward to. It's been far too long. When you think about the time without success, our last trophy 2008 is just absolutely crazy. Last FA Cup 1991, it's absolutely mental. Michelle writes here, you buy average players, that's what you get. Is that harsh, Billy? Average players, who do you think she's talking about?
I think since Paratici came in, and then we've had Lange now, or Lang, however you pronounce it. I think our recruitment has got a lot better. We've had a lot more hits than misses. Players like Kulusevski, Bentancur, Romero, Sarr, Udogi, they're not average players by any means. Our recruitment has definitely got better. Sometimes, when we go and sign a player like Manor Solomon or something like that for free, and then he doesn't really get in and out of the team, and then he goes, a year later, or it looks like to be given a year later. That's the kind of signing we don't really need to make that signing. But I think we're seeing fewer and fewer of those now. And I think what we are doing instead is picking up some, some of the best young teenagers in the world. And I'm very happy to do that. I'd much rather sign the guy from Burnley, for example, than Manor Solomon, like a ready-made player who's not really going to push the first team. I'd much rather go and sign a 19-year-old who might become world class in a few years. I think the divisive ones are going to be Timo Werner and Brennan Johnson, which I assume that she's alluding to. And they have to improve. They have got to be big improvement this season, because Johnson, we spent an awful lot of money on him, 50 million. He made up pretty decent numbers last season for a debut season, about similar to what Son did in his first season. So he needs to go and explode this season with those kind of numbers. Timo Werner, I'm not really sure on Timo Werner. You can see what he brings to the team, because he does, when he's one-on-one with a defender, he will go and beat the man and put the ball in, which is all really Ange wants. But for those two players, I think they're going to need a big season. Otherwise, it's just a complete waste of our time and money.
I don't want to sound, I certainly don't want this stream to be extremely negative, Billy, because a lot of people don't like negative streams. But the thing is, in that final third, when Ange keeps going on about we must be clinical in that final third and there's so much more growth, when you've got the likes of Brennan Johnson, Timo Werner and Richarlison, who, let's face it, let's be frank and honest about it, can be so wasteful in front of goal. It's frustrating, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think that's why going into this summer, we all wanted a winger that can beat the man. And I was gutted that we didn't get Neto. From what it sounds like from the, just following various forums and Twitter and, listening to people that supposedly know, that was one of our main prime targets, was Pedro Neto. And we probably got the deal done if we'd just gone and slapped the money out and, like Chelsea go and do. And I know it's Chelsea are obviously not a club that you want to draw comparisons with. They're very irresponsible, and what they're doing is ridiculous at the moment. But sometimes if you really want to go and get a deal done, just go and slap the money on the table and get it done. And I think if we'd have signed Pedro Neto, that is a kind of winger that can unlock any defence. He can beat a man. Obviously, with the injury record, it's a bit of a mixed bag with him, but that's the kind of winger that we need. And maybe the signing from Burnley, Odegaard, is going to be that player. He might well be. But I would love to go and sign a really, really quality winger by the time the window finishes, just because Johnson and Werner, we've seen it so many times. The same thing happens again and again. The most frustrating thing about me for Monday was that second half in particular. It didn't look like anyone had really learned anything from last season. It was the same thing that we saw time and time again. And that was the frustration for me.
When you spoke a few minutes ago about trophies, AB 15 writes here, an FA Cup is not going to do anything. Look at Manchester United. Now, when you spoke about the need and the want for a trophy from a fan's perspective, and I feel exactly the same, what do you think it would do for the fan base if we lifted an FA Cup or a League Cup? Because some people, Billy, it might not be enough for. They'll go, well, it's only an FA Cup or it's only a League Cup. What would it do for you personally?
I'll answer that question in 2 ways. For me personally, I really want to see Son lift the trophy, as you mentioned earlier. I think that's really, really important because this is a world-class player that's dedicated there pretty much their entire career to our club. He could have gone to Real Madrid. He could have gone to lots of places. He's been a loyal player to us. He's been an incredible servant, and he deserves to lift the trophy. And I think what it would do for the players is give them that belief that they can actually win. What I always remember is Guardiola and Mourinho, they always used to prioritise winning the Carling Cup, the League Cup. Because when you get that first trophy over the line in the season, then you go and get the taste of winning and think, right, we can go and win everything now. And I think that's what it would do for our players as well. And I think the other thing it will do for our club is it will give Ange a lot more leeway and a lot more time. Okay, so again, I hate to keep bringing them up. I really do. I really apologise to keep mentioning them. But Arteta had a pretty dismal first 2 seasons. But because he won the FA Cup, he had that leeway. So while he won the FA Cup, so we can keep going. And now that they're backed and they're seeing the fruits of that. And so if Ange won an FA Cup this year, he's not going to get sacked. He's going to get more time, more money, and then we have a further development of a squad with a plan and a manager and a style of play. We might see 2-3 years away, we'll go and challenge Man City and challenge Arsenal and things like that. So I think it will buy Ange a lot of time as well. But I also just think it's just become now 16. So, for example, Mikey Moore wasn't even a year old when we last won a trophy. Now he's in our first team. That's crazy, isn't it? Like, that's 16, 17 years. It's going to go into our 17th year of that trophy. I think I agree with, an FA Cup doesn't necessarily mean anything for a team in Man United. I just think it would quench something which our fans is constantly on the back of our mind, and it would just disappear then. And then we finally got that monkey off our back and thinking, right, now we've won a trophy, let's go and do something else. And I think it would be a huge, huge milestone lifted. And I agree that, it's, just because we won an FA Cup doesn't mean everything's going to disappear and we're going to be absolutely fine again. But I just think for us, because it's so ingrained in our fan base at the moment, this desire to win the trophy, until it actually happens, then fans are going to run out of patience with Ange. Fans are going to run out of patience with players. Everyone's going to run out of patience because we're constantly thinking we need to go and do something. Until we do it, that's always going to be a big factor. So I think, for example, if we'd have, if the whole trophy thing didn't exist, I think going into this season, all fans would be really positive for Ange because we can see that we're developing something meaningful. But because we're always thinking we have to win something this season, it's really, really difficult to not lose patience with it.
Do you think that Ange Postecoglou is going to be successful and lift trophies at Spurs, Billy? Because in the last couple of days, I've seen comments in the last couple of months, actually, about Ange Postecoglou being extremely disrespectful, calling him a PE teacher, not good enough. But of course, we know that he's been successful everywhere he's gone. But of course, we have seen that with Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, and they weren't successful at Tottenham. Do you have real belief that Ange Postecoglou is going to get the tools, given the time, get the patience from the fans, and be successful at Tottenham?
Do you know what? Yes, I actually do. And I think the thing is, so Ange is a really interesting mix of Conte and Mourinho, because he does say a lot of the stuff that Ange says, the stuff that Conte used to say, just a bit more of a negative tone. Like, he always talks about, winning and trophies and things. He talks about, it doesn't really matter if we get over the Champions League, we have to be progressing as a team. And Conte used to say so many things, but I think the difference is Conte and Mourinho were always looking at us as if we're a bit below them and sort of looking down on us as a club. Whereas Ange, he's a winner, and he also sees us as like the pinnacle of his career. So I think it's a really, really good mix. And I think just because if we can back him with the players, the dominating attacking football, I do think we'll get over the line. I really, really do. I have total faith in this guy. And what is happening is, I think we are starting to back him properly. Like, you know, every single window so far that he's had, we've spent a lot of money. If we go and sign another one or two signings before the end of this summer, we can say he's definitely been back again. I think the signings definitely be coming there now, and especially with financial fair play and PSR, we should, you know, we're pretty much the only Premier League club that has an almost unlimited amount of spending in summer transfer windows. So we've got to make the most of it. We've got to leave it as, you know, there's no question that we're backing him, but I have total faith in this manager. I really do. This manager is one that speaks to my heart as a Tottenham fan, the way that he talks about the club. You know, he doesn't sort of look down on us and view down on us. He speaks like a football fan all the time. You know, when he's on ITV and things like that, everyone loves listening to him just because he talks like a football fan. And I think as a fan, that's personally what I want, is a manager like that. So I have total faith in him. And I think if we stick with this guy for the next 3, 4 years, we will see a trophy.
It'd be interesting to see whether he does get that time. Stuart writes here, and I just wanted to ask you about the negative side of the fan base on Postecoglou himself, because Stuart writes here, Andrew's signings and tactics are shocking. What would you say to that, Billy? What have you made of Andrew's time at Spurs in terms of tactics and the players that he has brought in? Because he's come out and said in the last press conference, every decision is mine. We bring the players in that I want to bring in, because of course we heard from Antonio Conte before say a number of times, you know, about club signings, but Andrew's come out and said these are all my guys.
I think let's go last season for a start. Van der Ven and Vicario, excellent signings. Last window I thought was generally an excellent window. And Van der Ven, certainly an and signing, because he's one of them at Celtic as well. And Van der Ven, I think, is one of the best signings we've made in the last 10 years, easily. Vicario, great signing, and just made. Johnson, I can see, you know, raising a few question marks there for sure. And then in the January window, we had Dragusin, who looks like a pretty good signing. You know, Gray and Bergwall, excellent signings. So I don't really agree that the signings are poor. I think the ones that you could maybe question mark are Werner, Johnson, Solomon. I think overall our recruitment over the last few years has been excellent, much better than it has been in the Posh era and the Mourinho era and that thing. So I don't agree that the signings are poor, and I don't think he's going out and choosing every single player and saying this and this. I think what's happened now is we're more joined up as a team. Like, they have a recruitment team, they have a data team, they have Langer at the front of it, and Ange making the final call. So I don't think, you know, he's signing, we need to go and sign this and this. I think it's more of a joint up effort, and tactically, I don't agree that his tactics are poor, because it's exactly the kind of football that I want to see as a fan. I want to see dominating attacking football. You know, 70% possession. We have the most touch in the box of any team this year in the first game. We had 20 shots on target. I remember Conte and Nuno era. We would sometimes go 3 halves of football without having a single shot on target. I can't do that again. I can't do it again. And if you look at the most successful managers at the moment, Guardiola, you know, Arteta, Klopp, attacking football is the way to go now. Sort of the Jose era of, you know, setting a back, you know, counter-attacking football, it doesn't work in the Premier League anymore. Every team that you play is playing press and attacking football. Counter-attacking football just doesn't get you that far anymore. It's certainly not the topple man and win the league anymore. So it's definitely the kind of football I want to play. I think what we maybe need to do is buy players to play it to produce the style a bit better, but personally I'm on board with the signings and his tactics, and I just want to see. The only thing I would say is, if we have a problem with set pieces this year, that's unforgivable for me, because it was such a big issue last year, and if they've all summer to work on it, you know, I know he's questioned lots of times in the press conferences about having a set piece coach, and he always downplays and says, no, we don't need one, we sort of do it all in-house. If there are still significant issues at set pieces, I think that could be a big cross against his mark, because that's something which every single fan knows that's a big issue, and if it's not known by our manager and our coaches, then that would be a big problem. That's the only slight say I would say, but generally I'm hugely on board with his tactics.
That's exactly why I mentioned games 3 and 4, because I think Newcastle away, we certainly struggled with set pieces there last season, and Arsenal at home. You know, I hate to say it, Billy, that we're going to be playing against a top side, and you know, you've got to be bang on it. Stuart writes again here, 3 clean sheets in 30 matches. Gavin writes, people have short memories, unfortunately. Leslie says individual errors still costing us. And Alex writes here, Timo Werner plays better on the left wing. Both Romero and Pedro Porro were caught napping in that Vardy goal. Do you worry about us defensively? Because you've just said there you like us playing entertaining football. I've mentioned about the changing mood at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We are, feeling differently about supporting our club. Different football, of course, very different under Jose Mourinho and Conte. But do you worry now about the defensive side of our game?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely some concerns there. I think the thing is with our defence, it's a bit of a paradox because, of our back four, Porro, Udogie, Van der Ven and Romero, 4 outstanding players. No one would deny that. And, when we talk about we have a great back four on paper, but there's something there which sometimes leaves us a bit exposed at the back, and that can only really be the tactics. And I think really it's the number 6, isn't it? They're not screened, they're not protected by the midfield at all, and sometimes we're really easy to play over the top against. I think Solanki will help a lot by defensive this year because we're not going to lose the ball we're not going to get turned over in the final third and be easy to catch on the break anymore, because his hold-up player is a lot better than Son was. What kind of happened a lot last year when we were losing those, conceding that had 30 games without a clean sheet or whatever. We're sticking the ball up top to Son, it's bouncing off him with a poor first touch, and then teams will catch us on the break really, really easy. I think that'll be slightly different with Ange, but we've got 4 really, really quality defenders, but we don't have quality defensive numbers. I know one of the stats that I saw last year was our number of goals conceded when that back 4 was present was a lot better than it was. I think they only started 12 games together last season, so obviously they all had various injuries throughout the season. I think with that back 4 playing, there are no excuses to not be having a really tight defence because they're all 4 individually really good players. And if it's not working, then it's definitely a tactical issue that we need to solve. But I think the 2 things which I think will really help is if we go and sign a number 6, Solanki will help that too.
With that protection, I've spoken quite often, Billy, since Pierre-Emile Højbjerg's exit. He wasn't, I think it's fair to say, he wasn't a lot of fans' favourites, and players like him and Emerson Royale always got a lot of flack. Of course, they're both left. Good Premier League experience with both of them. Someone like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg leaving. Of course, he wasn't Ange's first choice, but he did play a lot of games, shoring up that defensive side of our game last season. Do you think he's going to be missed?
Yeah, he was a great sub option, wasn't he? I remember, I think it was Man United at home earlier in the season when he came on about the 60-minute mark and was excellent. And I do think we're going to miss that. But maybe, having someone like Archie Gray, who's a young player who, everything that we hear about him is one of the best teenagers in world football. So maybe giving him the chance instead might be good. But I just look at the very, very top teams. I look at Arsenal, I look at Man City. We don't have, for example, I was watching the Chelsea-Man City game and Kovacic, who, he's played the Premier League so many times. He's done everything. He's played in Europe. He's an experienced player, and he was excellent against that Chelsea midfield. The new look Chelsea midfield that's probably cost about £500 million to make couldn't. He handled them completely well, and I think that's the kind of player that we need. That sort of old, experienced head. So I would worry a little bit. I think if you're playing Archie Gray, just by the nature of a young player, they're going to make mistakes. They're not going to know, I need to stand. They're not as experienced enough to know everything that someone like Kovacic is going to know, or someone like Kante or something like that. They're really experienced guys that have been doing it for 10, 15 years. So I think I would like to go and sign a quality Prem-proven player to go in there as well, just because I think it would be unfair to ask a teenager to have to rely on them all season.
Billy, what is your expectations for this season? Because, of course, we finished 5th. We're in the Europa League. I'll ask you about that in a second. But surely the next step and progression would be to get into the top 4. I get this need and want for a trophy. I want one more than anything. But would finishing 4th, would that be enough progression for you?
It's a difficult question. I think it would have to. It depends on the manner that we finish 4th. If we played, if we won, if we improved visibly on the pitch last season, we weren't conceding, we weren't as open at the back, we weren't conceding set pieces. I think it's about the bare minimum that we could get away with as progress. Personally, the top 4, I've kind of at the point now where I've been to so many Champions League games, I've lost all interest in that. But I think as a club, if we zoom out and think realistically as a club, top 4 would be an excellent kind of progress for us because we could then go and have more Champions League revenue. We could go and sign better kind of quality of players on paper. It doesn't always happen with us, but on paper you could realistically go and sign more players. So on paper it would be progress. I think as fans we just want more. And as you just alluded to a minute ago, I'm probably going to talk about in a minute, Europa League is 2 birds in one stone, isn't it? It's a trophy and Champions League. So
yeah.
if it was up to me, I would put absolutely everything this season into winning the Europa League, because
that was my next question.
Yeah. That is all I want the season, is to take the Europa League seriously and win it, because it would sort of put everything to bed. We've finished in the top four. We'd win a major trophy, a European trophy. If it was me, and I think we generally have a chance. If you look at the teams that are in it this year, we've got a chance of winning that. If we are playing at our very best all the time, we have a decent chance of winning that trophy. And that, for me, is my expectation. That would be the best season in my lifetime.
How would you expect Ange Postecoglou to approach these Europa League games in, Billy? Because personally, for me, I would like to see us go completely strong and then bring on some of the development players when the job is virtually done. Or do you think that he will go with a lot of the fringe players or the squad players? Is that where the likes of Timo Werner will get starts? Is that are these the sorts of games where Will Lancashire will get a start, for instance? Do you want to see that approach, or do you want Spurs to go strong in these games? Because I was a big fan of Mauricio Pochettino, but even in some of the European games, he was always worried about that Sunday match. He was always worried about the weekend game rather than going really strong. Like he even done that in FA Cup games as well, which used to frustrate the hell out of me, because I'm a Spurs fan who just want us to do well in cups and go far in cup competitions. And I tell you what, that's when I feel the most gutted, when we go out of a cup competition. Do you think that Ange has learned some sort of lesson by making so many changes in that League Cup game last season against Fulham?
Yeah, I do think he would have made some. I think that would have been a big reflection point for him. And then I think we kind of got really unlucky with that Man City draw in the FA Cup, just because you're playing against arguably the best team in the world, and I think he went pretty strong in that game, didn't he? And we still lost. But so the thing is, for me, what I've always kind of thought, and which we've been really bad at. So I'll take the Sheffield United game from a couple of years ago under Conte as an example. We rested Harry Kane for that game. We went 1-0 down.
They all do it. They've all done it.
Yeah, and then we brought Harry Kane on with 20 minutes to go. We lost that game, and then we lost a league game after it as well when Harry Kane started. So what was the point of resting him if we lost both games?
Exactly. Yeah.
My perspective is, you start your strongest team, you go and win the game, you're 2-0 up at 60, 70 minutes, and then you bring on Marky Moore and Will Lancashire so they can get minutes then. That's what I would like to see. And why not bring those players into a Premier League game? You can't tell me that this against Leicester, a newly promoted Leicester, that's a much easier game than playing someone, Rangers or someone like that. So why are we, the sort of balance is wrong there, isn't it? If Mikey Moore had played on the right against Leicester, I'm sure we would look pretty decent. Definitely wouldn't have been out of his depth. I think these guys can cut it in the Premier League just as much as they can in the Europa. So I would prioritise the Europa completely. Playoff. The worry for me is we struggled last year with one game a week. We had the minimum amount of cup games pretty much, and half our team was injured all the time. We had terrible luck with injuries, terrible fitness. So I'm a bit concerned about 2 games a week. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see how we play it, because we've not seen it under Ange. So I'd be really interested to know what his approach is. But if it was up to me, I'll put all priority on that Europa League, sure.
That's an interesting point, what you mentioned about the squad there, because Ange has actually come out and said a number of times now that the squad is stronger. Even losing players like Emerson and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and we still expect a few more to go out the door as well. Do you think it's stronger, Billy? Some people are frustrated saying, well, we've only brought in a couple of youngsters. Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, of course, are up and rising stars. But do you consider us having a stronger squad? Because you've just said there, we only had 1 game a week. We were out of the League Cup at the end of August last year. We hope to go far in all competitions on all fronts this year. Do you think we're stronger?
I think it depends what you mean by stronger, because in terms of experience, we're definitely not stronger or weaker. But if you're thinking about players that are ready to play Ange's system and run 90 minutes for Ange, then maybe we are stronger just because we've got people like Lancashire, we've got people like Moore, we've got people like Bergvall, we've got people like Archie Gray. These young players are going to be much more easily manageable for Ange, because they're easier to adapt to his system because they're younger and they're not experienced much else. So I think we're stronger in terms of the fact that we have more players that are suited to Ange's football, which I guess is what we really want. And our fan base, and I do it myself all the time, I think why aren't we playing these? You know, everyone said it last season all the time. Why aren't we playing these youngsters? But at the same time, we're saying, why aren't we signing these new players? Well, if you go and sign the new players, the youngsters aren't going to play. So what do we really want as a fan base? Sometimes I think we have to. And I'm definitely hypocritical with that myself all the time. You know, I keep saying I really want to go and sign a right winger, but I also want to see Mikey Moore in the team. So that completely contradicts each other. So I think if we've made the decision to, right, you know what, we're going to stick with these youngsters now. And Man United did it last year. Kobe Mainu started playing for them. He's 18. He scored an FA Cup final for them. So why can't we have that, you know, with our 17, 18-year-olds that we've got? So I think we might not be stronger in terms of experience, but I think we're stronger in terms of players that are and can trust, if that makes sense.
Billy, what development players have really impressed you, you know, certainly during pre-season? Because, of course, yesterday, the under-21s played Oxford. We drew 3-3. We won 6-5 on penalties. Both Lancashire and Moore were on the score sheet back in the under-21 side. How much game time in the first team, in particular the Premier League, do you think that Ange Postecoglou will give them to in particular?
I think it's going to be difficult for Lancashire just because of Richarlison. We play one striker, and Lancashire he's vying for Richarlison and Solanki already. So I think his minutes might be quite a bit restricted. But what I think it'll be really good is just him being in the around the first team. I'm not being funny, but Richarlison's not going to be fit for the whole season, is he? So there will definitely be opportunities for Lancashire there. I predict that Mikey Moore is going to be featuring in the first team quite a lot by the back end of the season, just because I think he's incredible. I mean, you saw that goal last night. That's all we wanted against Leicester, wasn't it? A player to go and take the wing and then have a shot. He did it against I know it's obviously against Bristol Rovers, so it's not as good as Leicester, but even in the friendlies that we're playing against teams like Bayern Munich, he can beat a man. He's 17 years old. It's crazy, this guy. I think Mikey Moore is a complete future star, and I think he will. I think he'll be playing for us this season. I really, really do. Just because at the moment, Kulusevski, I don't think is a right winger for us. As someone said in the comments earlier, Werner is probably better on the left, so it's really Johnson and Moore. And I think Johnson's confidence is going to struggle, and I think Moore will be playing in the first team by the end of the season. I really, really believe that, and I would love nothing more than that, because having a 17-year-old Tottenham-born player in your team, that's all that we want as fans, isn't it? And then the other guys that have really impressed me are Bergvall. Every time I see him, he looks like the best player on the pitch. He really does. Like, even against Leicester, I thought he was excellent. And it's just something about him, man. It reminds me of when we had Dele Alli. Like, he just looks like he was born to play at this league and born to play at this level. He's 18 years old. And there's just something about the way that he plays the game, which I just love watching it. Just give and goes all the time, forward thinking, get it and pass it straight away. Archie Gray looks great as well. And I think the thing I've been impressed about Archie Gray, he's played right back, he's played in the middle, he's played centre back when he started in the pre-season. So that's excellent. But the one the one that I think has gone under the radar a bit for me is Jamie Donnelly, who I think is brilliant. I'm glad that he's going on loan. I think he's going to have a great future for us. And I think, as a Tottenham fan, having these youngsters coming through that are all Tottenham Academy players, and then we're going out and signing some as well, it's exciting times. And I really hope that this group of players can go and achieve something, because they've smashed it at every single age group, 18s, 21s. They're a brilliant set of youngsters. And now it'd be great if we could have some tangible success in the first team too.
Really, I agree with what you said earlier. This is the best set of youngsters that I think that we have had in our lifetime, because I watched the development side a lot and have done for years. And last season, they walked the league in Premier League 2, and then they had to win it again through the playoff system. And players like Jamie Donnelly were absolutely awesome. So I think it's a great loan for him. Hopefully he'll get a lot of game time. Of course, he started the other day. Let's hope that he gets a lot of game time and bangs on Ange Postecoglou's door for game time next season. Two Sheds writes here, Heung-min Son is one of Tottenham's greatest ever players. The criticism of him by toxic fans is truly shocking. Billy, what do you make of the criticism of Heung-min Son? And I've seen a lot of it, particularly since the Leicester game. There was some towards the end of last season as well. Do you think that this is Heung-min Son's final season in a Spurs shirt?
No, I don't. I don't think it's his final season. I think he'll be phased out of the next 2-3 years. I think he had a poor game against Leicester. There's no doubt about that. But for me, this guy has got unlimited credit in the bank. He's a club legend. He's done so much for us for his career. So many goals. He had what some people call a poor season last season, but he always his goal return in the Premier League is ridiculous. He's always getting minimum 15 Premier League goals. And if we took 15 Premier League goals out of our team now, we'd be screwed. We took 30 Premier League goals out 2 windows ago when we sold Harry Kane. Another 15. We're not going to replace 40. We haven't even replaced the 30 goals of Harry Kane yet. So it's just, I think in a poor Son season, he's going to get you 15 Premier League goals. I can pretty much guarantee if he starts every game for us this season, he'll chip in with 10, 15 goals without a doubt. And that is what, world-class players do. And I think, obviously, he's 32 years old. He's going to decline. But, we've got Yang coming from the South Korean team too. And we've got some good teenagers as well. What I think might happen over the next 2-3 years is he might be rotated a lot more. He might start playing games on the bench. But I think the thing is with Son, he offers so much more than just being a player on the pitch. He's like the face of our club. Every single new signing that we sign, if you notice that Son instantly goes and helps them and instantly integrates them in the first team. Archie Gray, he's always with Bergkamp. He's such a big for like the team morale and everything like that. Obviously, there's the whole financial side of it too, because he's a mega global star. I'm not personally too interested in that, just because I know that's what our chairman and owners are interested in. But I think he brings so much to our team, and I would, as you mentioned earlier twice now, I just want to see him win a trophy for us. I just want to see that because he deserves it. He really deserves it. So I don't think this will be his last season with us, and I think he's pretty much got a job for life until he wants it, and then hopefully can stick him around, be a club ambassador for us, because he is Mr. Tottenham for me.
Billy, of course, I said to you off air, there are a lot of negative comments and questions that we're going to go through in this stream. Now, whenever I seem to put a positive spin on something, and I've got to say, through this 51 minutes that we've recorded so far, whenever I've asked you a question or to answer a comment, you've put a positive spin on it, which I really like, and I try to do exactly the same thing. I quite often get called a happy clapper. Are you a happy clapper?
Well, again, I'm in two minds about it, right? Because I hate our owners. I'm so done with Bennett. I'm so done with Levy. I've completely lost all trust in them. I think they've let us down time and time again. I have no faith in them whatsoever. I would love us to have new owners. So certainly not a happy clapper in that regard. The opposite side of the coin is I love Ange. I think Ange he's a man for me. I absolutely love. He's probably going to end up my favourite manager at Tottenham, just because I've read it over there. I've got all 3 books about him. I've got his new book on order. I've got a painting of him in my office because I love this guy so much. I think he's a brilliant manager, and I think he's the one. So I'm in kind of I will happily get behind Ange and get behind the team. And I think happy clapper. If you're not going to get behind a team of kids that are the best kids in the country at the moment and are a talented group of kids, then what are you doing as a fan? What are we being? If we're not going to get behind 18-year-olds that will come through the Tottenham Academy and are the best youngsters in England, what are we doing? For me, that's what being a fan of Tottenham Hotspur is all about: it's supporting young homegrown players and playing attacking football. So I completely understand people's frustrations with our owners. I've lost all patience with them. I've lost all faith in them. But at the same time, I'm kind of happy at the moment with the things that we're seeing on the pitch, the football that we play, and we're actually giving these youngsters a chance. So I'm kind of half and half at the moment. But I'll never, ever judge anyone for being completely out of love with the football club, just because it's been 20 years of being constantly let down, being charged money, the most expensive season tickets in Europe. So I can totally understand if where the negative comes from. But personally, I'm just looking at this now as I want to get behind these young players and this manager that I love.
We try and add balance to everything. All these discussions on this channel, Billy, we always try to have the balance. That's why we talk about the negative things, we talk about the positive things. I think that sometimes a lot of people hear me probably and take notice of the positive things that I say, and then they think that I'm a happy clapper. But I think you've been very similar in your views to me, actually, today. Glenn writes here, Son is a good captain for doing club PR, but won't push those around him to show some grit. Noble Rich says Spurs need a new captain. Another comment here from MEVD 2011. As painful as it is to say, I think that Son's best days are behind him. Billy, what do you make of the appointment? Of course, it was just over a year ago now, of Ange Postecoglou appointing Heung-min Son as the club captain and Romero and Maddison as the vice captains. Heung-min Son, is he a good captain for you, or do we need someone else?
So I think there's lots of different types of captains. You've got captains like Son and Kane was similar, who are captains because of the example that they lead. They're not going to go around shouting at players and sort of barking orders at players and things. They sort of lead by example. I think Son is an excellent example of that. And I kind of think personally that the thing of captain is a little bit over exaggerated anyway, just because anyone can be a captain on the pitch. And I think as long as we've got guys like so Romero is kind of opposite of that, isn't he? He's going to punch you in the face if you make a mistake and things like that. And we saw Vicario do it to Bergwijn a little bit over there as well. I think as long as you've got those players on the pitch, they're still going to be commanding players. They're still going to be leaders on the pitch. So I'm not really too worried about Son being a good captain or not a good captain, as long as we have, and it's what we were talking about earlier, as long as we keep buying those experienced players that have done it and can guide the youngsters. And that's maybe where we're lacking a little bit at the moment, because we've got Romero, we've got Maddison, we've got Son, who are the captain team. But beyond that, we don't have we don't have loads of players that have got a lot of Premier League experience. So maybe we need to add a couple of those into. But personally, I kind of think the whole idea of captains is a little bit overrated, just because, when we had Toby and Jan in our defence, they weren't captains, but they were leaders all the time. They were telling everyone what to do. I think as long as you've got leaders on the pitch, that is more important than captains for me. And I think possibly you could say we lack maybe a midfield leader who's going to command us. And I saw one of our own fans saying the other day about how they wish Jordan Henderson was our captain. I'm not a big fan of Jordan Henderson, but maybe someone like that is what we need to mix in as well. But I think Son is an excellent captain for the reasons that whoever said it described. He's a great PR man. He's a great. He leads by example. It's very, very popular with the players. But I do think for every Son that you have, you need a Romero in there as well.
David writes here, Son is a public relations appointment. He is not an on-field presence. Our lack of on-field leadership has been on display for years. Darren writes very similar. We lack leaders in the team. Billy, who are the leaders in this team?
I think it's definitely a legitimate concern. And again, like as I was mentioning earlier in the Leicester game, as soon as Leicester scored and as soon as Vardy started kicking off a little bit, we crumbled a little bit, which is concerning because we did that a lot of times last season too. And it's even more concerning because we've done it countless times over the last 20 years. That's if you ask an opposition team what they think of us, that's what they would say, that we crumble, we bottle it, etc., etc. And I think I disagree, to be honest. I do think Son is a presence on the pitch. He has the respect of every single player that we have. There's no doubt about that. The players are completely behind him, and they always will be, just because he's such a good character. And he does bark orders at the players, and he does. If you look at the stuff that some of the stuff happens off the field, he has like text messages with the players where he tells them we're going to go and clap in front of the away fan. He really does. I think he does a lot of work behind the scenes that maybe we don't respect. And I think our real leaders, Romero, definitely up there. And I think the problem with that is sometimes Romero can be a bit hot-headed and lack concentration himself, which is not ideal for a captain. But he's definitely a leader. And I think we're seeing more and more, and especially as now that he's in his second season as Vicario as well. We saw him really shout out Bergwijn. And I think Van de Ven as well as another leader. And then the only one I guess I'd also say I think would make a great captain is Pedro Porro, because he claps every ball like a fan. He's got the same passion that all of us fan has. But I agree that someone like Brennan Johnson, I hate to keep digging him out, but I think there's a case to say that a player like Brennan Johnson is a bit mentally weak, and possibly Timo Werner as well. And sometimes we have too many of those players that when the going gets tough, they crumble. So
is that a worry though, Billy? Because when Andrew's come out and said that these are his players, is that what some of the fan base are worried about, do you think? Because these are his players that he has brought in, Johnson and Werner.
I think so, because I think when you sign a player like Johnson and Werner, you know why they sign them, just because of their pace, and they can beat a man and cross the ball into the box, which is exactly what Andrews wants. What is more difficult to get right as a recruitment is their character on the pitch, and no manager really knows that until it happens. So yeah, it is a worry for that reason, which is why maybe we need to go out and buy a couple more experienced players who know have got that in them. Brennan Johnson's a young player, and generally speaking, unless there's someone like Bergwijn who seems to have a little bit about him straight away, if they don't have that early doors, then it can be quite difficult to get that confidence. But I would also say, things like confidence and leadership are quite easy to develop. I'm sure Ange can work with those guys and get them there. But I do think there's definitely a legitimate concern that we don't have enough leaders, and I would like to see a couple more players brought in. Like Jamie Vardy. I don't want to go out and sign Jamie Vardy, please, no. But he rattled us completely on Monday, and he rattled our fans, and he scored. And we've seen it time and time again with Tottenham. And Mo plays did it against us as well. Completely rattled our whole team. I know we went on to win that game, but still, we were rattled for a good period of that Brentford game. And we've had it with Arsenal doing it for us countless times. how many times have people like Chesney rattling us as a club and as fans? Happens all the time. I would definitely like to go and sign some more leaders, because I think there are a couple of names in there, but we need I would like to buy a commanding midfielder. I think is what we lack the most.
Paul 123 writes here, wingers are an important part of Ange's system and the quality isn't there. I think we've spoken about that at length during this podcast so far, and I think there is a whole lot more to come, certainly in that final third, exactly what Ange Postecoglou wants. Billy, I wanted to ask you about Giovanni Lo Celso. What have you made of his Spurs career? Because he has been a Spurs player under multiple different managers. It hasn't quite worked out for him at the club. When you think Lo Celso and Ndombele, £100 million on the two, we as Spurs fans, including me and you, probably have said, we need to go and spend money. We need to go and spend money. Well, we spend big, and it didn't work out on these two. Lo Celso, probably his highlight, Man City away last season. I thought it's probably his best spell in a Spurs shirt under Ange Postecoglou, but it seems like Ange don't fancy him now, and the player, according to Fabrizio Romano, wants to move away, and in the next 9 days, it's highly likely that he will depart the club. What have you made of his career?
I think he's a catastrophic waste of money, whichever way you look at it. I think the really frustrating thing for me about him is you can see what he can do. You see it when he plays for Argentina. You see it when he plays for Villarreal. You sometimes see it for Tottenham, and that's frustrating that you don't see it every time he plays for Tottenham. But you can definitely see that there's a player there somewhere. And I think, as much as Hojbjerg was a real divisive player, and I'm not a fan of Hojbjerg. I'm glad that we've sold him, to be honest. But one thing you can say about him, he's always available. He's always available. I think he missed 2 games with us in 4 or 5 years because of injury. Celso was the polar opposite of that. He's always injured. Some of that might be a mental thing. But I think, and I've learned this over the last few years, particularly over the last 4 or 5 seasons, availability is an underrated characteristic in play. And that's why I'm glad that we signed Solanki. Because we've done it so many times in the last few years. We're going to sign Richarlison for 50 million. He has half a season in. Maddison, brilliant player. Brilliant, 10 games the first season, gets injured, then he's gone for months. Availability is so important. Availability is Lo Celso's worst trait. So I think it's been a terrible sign overall. And I think it's frustrating because there's a player in there, but it's just not happening for us. And it's time for him to go, definitely. But I can guarantee you what will happen is he'll go somewhere else and look really, really good. I just know that's going to happen. But it just wasn't the right fit at Tottenham. It just wasn't the right fit at all. And it's a shame, but he never really stuck to it. I thought he might even be Mourinho again at Fenerbahce or Villa or something like that. He'll probably go and do well somewhere else, but I don't know if it's a psychological thing, whether his heart was never really in it for Tottenham, and if so, I can never respect him for that. But his availability has meant it's just been a terrible signing overall for us.
It's Vic there says here, any Chelsea players you go for? I don't think so. I think I couldn't even name half their squad. Could you, Billy?
No, we'll be here till Thursday, won't we, if we go through all the Chelsea players. Can I ask you one question, because I've seen this today. Would you take Raheem Sterling on loan?
There's no way that Spurs and Chelsea will be doing business anyway, Billy. So I think that is that is the answer. This whole Conor Gallagher thing about all the links and the interest. They were never, ever in a million years going to sell Conor Gallagher. But would I take Raheem Sterling? I think on his day, he can be a very decent player, but I think he's very greedy. And I think that he can be very wasteful as well. And is he better than what we've got in that final third? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. He's also on £325,000 a week, which probably could stop the conversation dead there. No, I'd rather sign someone who's a winger in their prime rather than a winger on the declines. We've got Son who's a similar age to him, and I'd rather go and sign someone right in their bang in their prime. And it's not even worth getting into a debate because, as you say, Chelsea will do it anyway. I would like to go and sign a quality winger, but I'd be more interested if it had to come to it. I'd be more interested in signing Madueke just because he's Tottenham academy and club trained or whatever. But personally, I never want to do this with that club. I think they're a horrible institution, and the last thing I want to do is help them out with financial fair play and make their balance sheet look good. They could be in real trouble in a few months' time because of the ridiculous spending that they're doing. I've seen they're even linked with Osimhen.
Really,
our players today is crazy.
You've mentioned Arsenal and Chelsea far more than you should have done on this podcast.
As anyone who knows me will know that I hate Arsenal and Chelsea more than I support Tottenham, which is why I keep bringing them up. I absolutely hate them.
Let me ask you about Saturday's game. Let me ask you about Saturday's game. Of course, Everton at home. They've just lost 3-0 at home against Brighton. Their fans aren't happy. Some of them, some comments I've read online saying that Sean Dyche hasn't changed anything. They're unhappy with that defeat, certainly at home, losing 3-0 at home. What do you make of the game on Saturday? What changes do you think Ange Postecoglou will make? Because, as I said earlier, Bentancur got the nod in that number 6 role. It's highly likely that he will miss this game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Basuma, will he come back in? Would he have done enough to, apologise to Ange Postecoglou and show that he wants to play for Spurs again and not prat about with balloons?
Yeah, I don't think he'll go for Basuma, to be honest. I think that would sound send quite a bad message to the rest of the squad. I think he'll start Archie Gray in number 6 against Everton. I really do. Yeah, just because I think Basuma's going to have to do a lot to win Ange's trust back now. I think it's too soon for him, and I think he's got a lot of repair work to do because he's completely. And Ange has spoken about Basuma in public, and then and he even said, "I want Basuma to be a leader for these guys, Archie Gray and Bergwijn." And a couple of games later, he's gone and done that. I think that's the only change he will make, if I'm honest. I think he'll stick with the complete same team. He'll start Johnson, he'll start Son, he'll start Solanki. Because I think if you drop Brandon Johnson against Saturday, that's his confidence done. I think Andy's a big fan of Johnson, certainly much bigger fan than I am. And he will start Johnson. And I think it'll be a pretty much unchanged team with Archie Gray coming into 6. And I would worry if we didn't get a really positive result against Everton. I think they're there for the taking. The concern is that they will definitely play a low block, which we hate. Sean Dyche is the master of that. But at home, first home game of the season, their fans are in a really bad way at the moment. They've got no faith in the team or the manager. There's no excuses not to go and win 2-3, 4-0. There really isn't.
Billy, give me a prediction, not only for Saturday, but after the first 4 Premier League games. So you've got a point at Leicester, Everton at home, then we've got Newcastle away, Arsenal at home. Out of those 4 games, how many points will we have after the first 4?
I'm very confident that we'll beat Leicester. Everton, sorry. I was confident that we'd beat Leicester. That one came back to bite me. Of those 4 games, Newcastle away is the one which I have no idea how it's going to go. I have absolutely no idea because we're a better team than Newcastle. There's no doubt about it. We finished above them in the league. We're comfortably better side than them, but they batter us every time we go there at the moment. I don't know what happens when we go there, but we seem to, it seems to be a real mental thing for us. I'm going to be, I'm always most positive at the beginning of the season, so I'm going to be optimistic and say we might draw that game rather than get beat 4 or 5-0 like we have done the last 2 seasons. So I think we'll beat Everton, we'll draw against Newcastle. I'm going to say we'll beat Arsenal just because I hate them. We'll beat them 1-0. 5, there you go, 7 points.
I was going to say, I know exactly what we do Newcastle way. We walk up all those stairs, then we walk back down them very quickly.
Yeah, after about 5 minutes, they have a heart attack. Yeah,
it's got to change. It's got to change up there. But yeah, as I said earlier, the set pieces. How we deal with set pieces in both those very, very difficult games, Newcastle and against Arsenal.
Billy, I think I saw something like in pre-season. Something like 11 of Arsenal's 16 goals in pre-season have been from set pieces or something like that. It's a real concern. And Solanki obviously has been spoken about as being, and only another player that can head the ball like Harry King used to be able to from defensive set pieces, but it's going to be a tough game. I'm only saying that we'll beat them just pure blind faith. I could never back them to beat us because I don't have the confidence saying it out loud, but it's a really worrying game. I'm not going to lie, it's a really worrying game just because they're the best set piece in the country. We're arguably the worst. So. And I think if we, say, for example, we go and beat Everton, then lose to Newcastle and Arsenal, set these goals, that's when I think the fan base will start to unravel a little bit just because it's not really any progress on last season. Personally, 4 or 5 games in, there's a lot more games of the season to play. But I think if we concede a few pieces goals against those teams and get beat heavily again, then I think that's when the fan base might really start to unravel a little bit. So it's a really big opportunity going for Ange to show we are better than last season. We have changed. We're not going to go to Newcastle and be 4-0 down in 20 minutes again. And we're not going to go to Arsenal and concede it from every corner that they have. So it's it's huge 2 games. I think that Newcastle and Arsenal game are massive for Ange. I really do think that.
Absolutely. Billy, I wanted to ask you about centre-back Radu Dragusin. Of course, very, very impressive displays at Euro 2024. Where and when does he get game time this season? Is it cup games? Is it the Carabao Cup? Is it the Europa League? Because, of course, he turned down a move to Bayern Munich. Eric Dyer's playing there now. He turned down the move to Bayern Munich to play for Spurs. Very, very limited game time so far. While you've got Van de Ven and Romero, he's not going to get a look in, is he, in league competition?
Depending on which one Ange prioritises, Van de Ven and Romero will be playing every single game that Ange prioritises. That's no doubt about that. They're two of the best centre-backs in the world. Van de Ven is literally perfect for Ange's system. Romero is Romero, one of the, arguably one of the best centre-backs in the league, in the world. World Cup winner, won Copa America twice now, player of the Copa America, some people are saying. So he's not going to get a look in versus those, so there's no doubt. What will be good for him this season is, with the Europa League, there's definitely going to be a lot more rotation. So if he gets, he might start every Europa League game. He might start the Premier League games after the Europa League game if Ange prioritises the Europa League games. But I do feel kind of sorry for him. But then again, when you go to a big club, that's the kind of thing you're going to happen. If you sign for Man City or Liverpool or Arsenal, if you will go to a really big club, which is what we're sort of pertaining to be now, then you're going to have to really work for your place. And I think what might be interesting is that he might be being told sort of, Romero keeps being linked with Real Madrid. He's a world-class defender. He might not be here in 2-3 seasons' time. I hope he stays with us forever because I'm a massive Romero fan. But if Romero gets a move, then you might see Dragusin. He's really, really young still. He looks like he's a sort of 40-year-old samurai warrior, but he's actually only 23, isn't he? So it's very young for a centre-back. So I think there's going to be plenty of time for him to get into our first team, but I just can't see it happen while Romero's there.
Billy, Craig writes here, really worried about the season ahead. Are you surprised? I know X and Twitter can be, a toxic place at times. We've all seen that and witnessed it. But are you surprised on how down, worried, frustrated people are feeling after just one game?
Yes, but I would never tell anyone, how to feel or how they should feel about when supporting their football club. And I think when you have owners that have constantly let down the fan base for 20 years and, been starved of success, I can understand why people are negative going into a new season, because our season ticket price have just gone up. And we, if we finish fourth again, there's been no progress on the pitch. So why are we paying more money for a sort of, a similar product? So I can understand where it comes from. Personally, I'm quite excited going into the season just because of these youngsters we've got coming through. Hopefully we've got a decent manager that's going to stick with us and stick with the style of football, and it's, players are more used to it now and they should on paper get better. So I'm personally going into the season optimistic, but I can understand. I think if people are really negative after this game, it's more of a built-up sort of apathy towards the club, which has been made by the owners continually letting us down. I don't think it's on Ange's head, even though they might be saying, "Oh, Ange's never going to do anything." I think it all stems from the way the club has been run over the last 20 years. Personally, I just want to give everything to these young players, to these exciting players, see how it goes from there.
Billy, lastly, I just wanted to ask you about James Maddison, because he had a fantastic 45 minutes at Leicester. The second half was a very different 45 minutes, but not just for him, but for the whole team. How big a season is this for James Maddison? Because, of course, he missed out on the England place at Euro 2024. He has really got a point to prove. What have you made of Maddison in a Spurs shirt so far?
I think what you just said summarises his Spurs career so far. He was excellent for the first half of last season, and then he got injured and he never really came back the same player. So Monday was a perfect replica of that inside 90 minutes. I think he's, his talent is undoubtable, and certainly his goals and assists are undoubtable. We don't have very many players that can get make the passes and the set places that he can make. So I think it's really, really important. But I think the difference is this season is he has got, in Lucas Bergwijn, he's got a player that will, if he's not playing his best every single game, he's going to be changed like that. And Bergwijn might come into the team. I know Bergwijn is a bit, slightly different because he can also play number 8, but he's got this young player who's 18 and breathing down his neck every single game that is obviously going to go into one of the world's best midfielders. I think, everyone can see Bergwijn's talent. And I think if that doesn't motivate Maddison to be putting consistently performances like the first half, then he's just going to be replaced. And wouldn't surprise me to see a world where, you know, if we have a similar season to last season, Bergwall's going to be starting by the time Christmas comes along. So I think he's going to need a big season, but you know, that 45 minutes in the first half is exactly the Maddison we want. And hopefully he's got the Euros behind him, and he's got the motivation to get back in the England team. He's got the competition of Bergwall, and he's also, you know, he's entering the peak of his career now. He's going to want to really press on as a player because, you know, his time as a peak footballer is dwindling. So this is sort of his peak years now, and he will want to be getting in the Champions League and we want to win trophies. So I have to say, it's going to be a big season for him. It has to be a big season for him. Otherwise, you know, the next guy is right there in line, and it's going to be Bergwall.
Yeah. Billy, very last question. Score prediction for Saturday. I'm going to go 2-1 Spurs. I think it's going to be a lot tighter than people think. So that's what I'm going to go with, 2-1. What are you going for?
I'm going to go 3-1 just because I think Solanki is going to get a brace on Saturday, and I'm going to go put my neck out and say I think Bergwall's going to get his first Tottenham goal as well. So 3-1. I don't go into any game at the moment thinking that we're going to keep a clean sheet. So I'm going to go 3-1.
Billy, you've been a great guest. Loved having you on here. So thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find you on social media? And you've got the summer off at the moment.
Yeah, I do. I've got a week left, so you know, and the fear is starting to come. So yeah, just Billie T on Twitter, and I go to all the home games and stuff. So I look forward to seeing people there, and let's hope where I really love to see people there is Bilbao next year, Europa League final, where we win it. That's all I want this year.
I'll see you there, Billy. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, be fantastic. Billy, thank you so much. Hopefully we can get you back on the channel very soon after a game or one of the preview shows. But you've been a great guest. Thanks so much. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all of your comments and your questions. And we will be doing another one of these very soon. Have a great week and come on, you Spurs.